And I can definitely do tomorrow.
So, I have today Glenn and Rob, tomorrow Ron and Ken, and tomorrow Dennis. At 10:45.
Thursday.
So we'll try to get Ken to swap. Otherwise, I might have to do it.
That was a kind of happens along. And look at the calendar, I know Fridays. I'm gonna go out on something.
And you know what he is, so.
I did freeze those. But
Go ahead with my
we'll see.
Yeah.
I think it's won't be good until next week. Today's a little windy and cold.
So I've seen your,
So I messed with the tradition. The handouts are in the front now,
Today.
and then the sign-in sheet as well.
but then I came back and said, technically, yeah, but.
She should. I guess that's my fault.
And then,
Then Ken said, I can do whatever you want. I said, well, Rob's gonna do, is trying to do Saturday, so you do tomorrow. So then he said, okay.
okay, well, like I said, I'll be here at 8 AM tomorrow. I cannot do this time.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Dan, I wanted to tell you that I was very impressed to find out that that berry pie was yours. And I was very. And raspberries, good for my heart.
Yeah,
And now, yeah, I heard you grew them.
yeah, I did.
Impressive.
How does he find time to do all this?
I don't anymore.
Gosh.
It takes about an hour to make the pies.
I mean, to grow stuff, I'm just like, I don't have a green thumb, so.
Well, I do raspberries too, but they're only a couple years old. So last year was the first year I got a decent crop. So
Mine are getting old now and they're kind of, they need to be replenished.
I got this one that was called Austrian raspberry or something. Anyways, this thing shot up with a stalk. It was 3/4 of an inch thick, and it got like 6 feet high. And I'm planting this in a townhouse association. It's supposed to blend in with their plantings. It's like, I gotta cut this down.
Oh, man.
I don't know if that was just a bolt or what. But we'll see.
Good morning, everyone. I heard you, Keith.
Oh, it's fine. Go.
No, I had, well, it's kind of new, it's probably 9 months old.
Welcome back, Rob. Thanks, Ronnie. You been in Haven? Did you have a good trip? It was a great trip.
Where'd y'all go?
Oh, we pretty much covered the west coast of Florida and then, Fort Lauderdale on the east coast.
Nice.
I was in Bonita Springs from the 5th to the 14th of February.
This year?
And
What was that?
visiting my brother-in-law and sister-in-law.
When did you call me?
What should I call you? What do you want me to call you?
Yeah, no, let's see. We would have been there, yeah, I think, we were definitely during Bonita Springs during that time. Because my birthday was the 5th. We spent a few days in Fort Lauderdale, and then we went back to Bonita Springs. A couple of weeks.
Happy birthday, what's the damages?
Yeah, big one,
What's that?
59.
Oh, that's not the big one. Next one's the big one.
59?
He's been 59.
And then lying advice. Oh, we got to pray for him. What are you?
75.
I was guessing you said 60. I think go 60.
75.
You're good. You're good.
Whoa,
Keep it up.
75.
The baby, right?
Right,
That's what Rebecca's mom always said. Oh, you're just a baby.
I'm headed for 89
All right, that a boy.
this month.
Still going strong.
You know, you could have brought a pie
Someone do
today.
me a favor. I have the group chat on the screens. If you could just look up from time to time to see if they have any questions. They can't hear us. We have a problem with the wire that Todd is working on. So I told them to put anything in the group chat. And it's hard for me to kind of turn around every time.
They can hear you, but they can't hear us, or what?
They can hear us, we can't hear them.
Oh.
There's a faulty wire over there that Todd needs to work on, and he hasn't been here, so.
We can hear you, says Keith.
We just can't talk. Yeah, we can't hear you, so if you ask a question, just ask in the chat.
We can hear you fine, and okay.
It's gonna be more of a distraction than a help, but yeah, we learned that when we had our trip council meeting during the tornado watch, so. All right, so as you came in, make sure you sign in, and then there are 2 handouts for you. We are beginning a new study today, the Book of Ezekiel. And so we're not going to even get to chapter 1. We're just going to do some historical background and context. Because it was drilled into me in seminary when I took Old Testament. Make sure you know the context before you start to teach the class. Because there's a lot happening in Ezekiel's time.
Thanks.
So, yeah, the first one is going to be our actual study that we'll get to today. The other is a timeline that I got from my Old Testament professor at seminary that I will tell you a story about when we look at it. So, but I'm going to say this up front. I don't have a mission that we have to get through this entire handout today, or we have to get through an entire chapter next week. We're going to go at this at a pace where we can all follow along.
Good.
So if it takes us 2 years to go through the book of Ezekiel, it takes us 2 years.
We'll learn it.
Some of it we will go through very easily. Other we will stop and we will talk about and ask questions, and you guys can talk about, and I can listen, and it's just going to be a great time. So, but let's open with a word of prayer. Gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord, this chance to begin a new study of your word, a challenging book to a lot of people. Lord, we ask that you be with us as we begin to look at the historical context, what was going on in Ezekiel's time as he was writing to the people. And Lord, we just ask that you would guide our conversations and our thoughts, and let it be pleasing in your sight. We ask this all in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Perhaps like we can't do it today and we plan to do it tomorrow, that's what his original plan was. Then I messed it all up. So he's gonna do it morning at 8.
Great. All right. So I want to ask you guys the same question we got asked in seminary. Before we begin anything, what do you know about the book of Ezekiel? That's your first thing on the piece of paper. And don't freak out, because this was the first question we were asked, and all of us would look around like, what do you know? I don't know. So,
The wheel's going round and round.
all right, so you know about some of the visions. What else do you guys remember know about Ezekiel?
He got the nickname Zeke the Freak.
Yeah, I learned that from seminary. I passed that on.
Was that a prophecy, right? Was it he prophesied?
Yeah.
Only that it's prophetic.
Yeah, so hopefully by the end of this class, you guys will do what we did in seminary. This was one of our final questions on our final was, what do you know about the book of Ezekiel? We could barely at the start just write a couple sentences. At the end, we could write like a small essay because we learned. So hopefully that's what we can do. So we know he has some visions, he does some weird things, he's prophetic. What else do you guys know about Ezekiel?
It comes after Lamentations and before Daniel.
Okay.
about the extent of mine.
All right. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I just wanted, I got asked that question every Bible class I took in seminary. So I'm like, I want to try this on the men. We're in a relationship where they trust me like that. So,
But I think he blasts the Israelites for turning away from God.
yeah. All right. So just to begin with, for an introduction, the author is Ezekiel the prophet. There's no disagreement among scholars. The date that he is writing between 593 and 570 BC. So the other handout I gave you was a timeline, and I'll have this for John and Keith when they get back. I don't have a digital copy, and when I tried to scan it, it got real fuzzy. But this is a timeline of the Old Testament. So it begins in Genesis and it ends at Malachi. And so Dr. Penn Halligan is the Old Testament professor at seminary now, and he gave this to us. And once you pass this class, you are allowed to share this with your congregation, as long as I didn't try to sell it. So hopefully you guys will find it helpful. It's helpful for me when I start reading through the Old Testament. I think, okay, this is what's going on. So we are at we're at the divided monarchy. It's at the bottom of the page. So you'll see on the timeline, there's just a bunch of kings, and so the kings are the major on the major part of the timeline. Then underneath, you have the prophets that were writing. So if you look over at 593, you have Ezekiel, but at the same time, you have Jeremiah, and also Daniel is writing during this time period. So you have 3 prophets writing at the same time.
Oh, we're on the second page. I'm looking at the first page.
Yeah.
So the first one is Genesis to Exodus. Then you have Joshua and Ruth and Judges. Then you have the kingdom, when the kingdom is under David. And then you have the split. And that's what the page we're on. And then the final one is just the end of the timeline, the Persian period, after they come back from exile. So you guys are free to use this and to share this with people. I just find it very helpful to look at sometimes.
Yeah, the timelines, I've seen it before, they're cool. It puts a good thing, a spin on it.
Yeah.
Where you're at. I like this.
Yeah.
Gotta figure out how to use it. It's like a map.
All right, so you guys are trying to figure out how to use it. When I took Old Testament with Dr. Penn Halligan, I had to fill this in the first day. He's like, "What? How much do you know on the timeline?" I'm like, "All right, so I know Genesis goes here, and I know Micah goes at the end." I'm like, "All right, so," and then by the end of the class, I could fill in a good portion of it. But
Well, thank you for the hand and the push.
yeah,
Because this would be, yeah.
yeah, and every now and then he'll update it, and he will send us updates. He has the list of his former students that have interest in it. So the dates are 593 to 570. We'll talk about what's going on. Some of the places that we're going to read about are Babylon, the Chebar Canal, which is mentioned in chapter 1. We'll have Jerusalem, Israel, Judah. The Temple of Jerusalem will be a big conversation. Ammon and Moab, sorry. But the thing that, remember, Ezekiel is not in Jerusalem. I had to remind myself of that. We'll talk about it, but Ezekiel is in Babylon, writing to the people back in Jerusalem. And we'll talk about how he ends up in Babylon, and there's still Jerusalem. Some of the people that we're going to talk about is, of course, Ezekiel. We have the exiles, the people that are going to go into exile, into Babylon. We have the cherubim and other angels. That's going to be the apocalyptic visions that he has. We have the elders of the Jewish people. We have Israel, and then we have Nebuchadnezzar is going to be the king.
Okay, so this is not the time, right, this is the time of where the king, not Jeroboam, was it Jeroboam? That he allowed Israel to go back and start building again?
No, this is before all that.
Before this?
Yeah,
This is Babylon, though. We're in Babylon. Ezekiel's in Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to read about the exile. about how Nebuchadnezzar comes in and what happens when the Babylonians come in.
Okay.
And then next week we will start Ezekiel chapter 1 or continue. It's depending on how far we get.
So is this more the beginning of the exile?
It's this is pre-exilic. So we're going to cover pre-exilic, the exile, and then we'll get to Ezekiel.
Okay.
But Ezekiel, when is his time?
He is, well, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. He was taken in the first wave. So there's three
Yeah,
waves
just
of,
like at the beginning.
yeah, there's 3 waves of deportation that take place with the Babylonians.
Not at the end when they're going back and rebuilding.
No, all right, hold on, we're getting, so you're talking about Cyrus after,
That's it.
yeah, that's after the exile. After they've been there, God anoints Cyrus and he lets the people out of exile.
Yes, let's them go back and start building the temple again, and they had to work with their swords on them, because the people around are like, hey, whoa.
Yeah, the neighbors are reporting to,
Yes.
not Cyrus, Darius. Hey, the Israelites are building their wall again. Are you gonna allow that to happen? So they had to stop, and then
Yeah,
that's after.
that's after this. This is pre that, okay.
Yeah,
But the players were the same. Ezekiel's involved in that, or not,
Is it-
Ezekiel is probably dead
by that time. Okay,
Yeah.
all right,
because they're going to be in exile for 70 years.
okay.
And Ezekiel begins his ministry he begins writing at 30, because you had to be 30 years old to be a high priest, or a priest, because Ezekiel is going to be.
Okay, that's interesting.
If I go too fast, if I confuse you, let me know, because so.
That's why Jesus started his ministry.
Yeah, but Ezekiel, he was taken very early, and he was taken in the first wave, so scholars put him at around like 25, 26, and so he had to wait a few years before he could begin prophesying, or before God called him to be a prophet. The other thing that's helpful, I find, when I do a study of a book of the Bible, is a great outline. And I know Ron loves the Lutheran Study Bible. They have a great outline of the book of Ezekiel. But one of the sources we use in seminary is Prepare the Way of the Lord, an introduction to Old Testament. And this is from Concordia Publishing House. And this is how they break down the Ezekiel, the book as a whole. So for the first 3 chapters, it's all about Ezekiel's call from God. You have the superscription, which is Ezekiel, son of whoever he's the son of. And then you have his inaugural vision. And then you have a commission, a preparation. He loses his speech. And then that all ends the first part of the book. Then we get to the kind of the hard stuff to understand, the signs and visions of judgment. And so this is where he's told to lay on his side so many days to symbolize exile, or he's made to build a model. He was asked to shave off parts of his beard and throw one way and throw it into the fire. So that's all of that. Then you have judgment against the Israel's mountains, the sounding of the alarm. And then the big thing you have is that chapter 8 is when God leaves the temple. And we'll talk about that, because we have the opposite happen when the tabernacle is built in Exodus. We read about how God's presence filled the temple. But in chapter 8, we'll see how God's presence leaves the temple. So some of it is narrative, some of it is dialogue, so some of it is straightforward, other of it is hard to write. It's written in poetic Ezekiel, so we have to kind of take our time with it. But then part 3 of the book is chapter 12 to 24. You have the prophecies of judgment against Israel. So you have signs of the times. You have the true and the false prophecy. There's a lot of judgment against Israel because God is very upset with Israel. He's given them so many times to repent and stop doing what they've been doing, following other gods. And now it's come to a point where this is it. Ezekiel is telling them, you're going to go into exile. So yeah, you have just oracles are anger against the people of God. Some of these you have, and then I'm gonna just kind of give, when we get to chapter 24, that's the end of Jerusalem. That's where the Babylonians literally just come in and just wipe out Jerusalem. So then you have Ezekiel in the next part of the book, he turns his attention to the nations, the enemies of God, and he pronounces judgment against them. Tyre, if you guys are in the Revelation study, we talked about Tyre a couple weeks ago because that was a major powerhouse in the Old Testament. It sits right on the coast, and it brought in a lot of wealth for the nations. So then we have the oracle against the nations, and then we have Jerusalem's demise. And so we've had all the doom and gloom, the judgment, the law. Now we get the gospel. And so we see Ezekiel's gospel as the last part of the book. You have Yahweh, which is God's name, saving his flock, restoring the land, God's eternal covenant. Then you get to chapter 40, you have the new temple. That's going to be a very interesting series of readings. The new land, the new city, all those things. So this is the gospel and the good news of Ezekiel's gospel. Any questions? I just encourage you as we go through the book of Ezekiel to kind of keep this outline handy because it can be very easy to, okay, what's going on here? Because he'll have a conversation and then he'll jump into another one. You're like, wait, who's he? So, but these are just,
So this takes place over some years,
Mhm.
the whole book.
Yeah.
So when was the book actually written? And did Ezekiel write it?
yeah. So if you look at the very top of the handout,
Most scholars say Ezekiel wrote it.
yeah, Ezekiel wrote it himself. And then it's somewhere between 593 and 570 he wrote this.
So he kind of, after it all happened, he's writing it as a review of what happened. No,
No.
or he's writing it as he goes.
He's writing it as it's occurring. Like God is telling him this is what's going to happen, and then he writes it to the people in Jerusalem, and then it unfolds.
But the whole book itself, is it like his diary and he's updating it as he goes? Or is he all of a sudden compiling all those notes into the book?
He's in Jerusalem the whole entire time.
Yeah.
He's in Babylon this entire time. Thank you. He never goes to Jerusalem. God reveals everything that he writes to him. But what's going to
So
happen?
did he just sit down and write the whole thing, or did he probably have notes and compile it, or was this kind of like his journal?
We're going to see, like, God calls him at a canal, and that's where he begins to prophesy. And so we'll go back to that question. I don't want to answer it because I'm not 100% sure, honestly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I read Hummel is the expert. The late great Dr. Hummel was the Ezekiel expert. He wrote the 2-volume commentary. He goes after that question in the introduction, and he doesn't come away with a clear answer.
It's likely.
Was it written?
Maybe not.
Was it written in a time period? Was it written later? Like he presents evidence for both. So I don't have a clear answer.
Sure. That makes sense.
But
There's a ton to get, tons to unpack here. This would be cool.
like I said, I'm excited.
Yeah, man.
Like, yeah.
So I have a question. Is most of this talking about Jerusalem, or is it symbolic that it applies to today in the end times?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when we get to the judgment, he talks about the shepherds of God's people, how they scared them and scattered them, and how the good shepherd, that can apply to us nowadays with pastors, how they've misused God's word and they've scattered the flock. What we're really gonna pick up on about like the end times is gonna be the new temple. That's the one that really is talked about. But we
We could skip right to the gospel.
Dr. McHalligan's not smiling anymore. His thing was context. You always want to take a book in context because the paragraph before sets it up and the paragraph after. So, but we can. I will say both wrong. We can take this as this applies to Ezekiel's period, but it also applies to us nowadays. So.
I think that's often the case in
Yeah.
Bible.
But remember how when we did the growing older, growing wiser, it was a lot of, what does this make you think? It's not that kind of study. We're going to look at it from Ezekiel's saying, and then we can always put on our Jesus glasses, as my professor calls it, and we can see how it points forward to Christ. But there's a lot to look at Ezekiel. So, some of the theological themes that we're going to come across is the divine glory, the presence of God. Like I said, we're going to see how his divine presence literally leaves the temple in Jerusalem, and Ezekiel describes that. We have the Sinaitic covenant, when God made his covenant with the people at Sinai. You have Yahweh's marriage to Israel, the relationship that they have, how God is faithful to them when they are unfaithful. So you guys know Yahweh is another way of saying God's name, right?
Jehovah's Witnesses use it all the time. That's one of their, they use Yahweh and Jehovah. Jehovah and Yahweh, a lot of their.
There's another one.
Can I just say this ahead of time?
Yeah.
Please do not use Jehovah. That is a mistranslation of God's name, so please don't.
That's what I say, they use it all the time. It's like Jehovah, Yahweh.
Yeah, put it in there.
Yeah.
It's in there.
I'm not but that just, because in seminary, that was really drilled, it is Yahweh or Adonai or God or Jesus. There is no Jehovah. That is a mistranslation of God's name.
Why don't we 100%,
knocking on your door.
do we 100% know the vowels in Yahweh? Because the vowels weren't written.
I don't think there was any vowels.
No, the vowels were added for people like me, non-Jewish people, so I could stumble my way through the language.
And when they came across it in the text, they didn't even speak it.
No, they'd say Adonai even.
But do we really know it's exactly Yahweh or something? It's got to be similar to that at least.
I think it was like, he that we do not say his name. It was so holy that there was not allowed to say.
Kind of like all the
That's
words.
how they looked at it. That's how it's explained to me. I don't.
Well, I will try, it's going to be very
I'm just-
hard for
I'm
me
just
not
saying
to say Yahweh, because I was taught that.
I know a lot of people say it's established that way and everything, and I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of wiggle room there or not. I don't know. I think, at one point I almost started Yahoo, but maybe that's because the letters were missing or something. You know what I mean? In that little.
Tetragram?
That little lead tablet that was
Oh.
found recently.
Oh, I haven't heard about that.
Oh, you don't know about that. Okay.
I follow the archaeology, but I haven't seen it recently. So.
That's how it's,
It's mostly it's the oldest writing that they found.
Yeah. that's how they wrote it.
But
Yeah,
That's Yahweh.
I'm partially able to read the Hebrew.
Oh, you are?
Yes,
Oh, cool.
I don't know the words, but I can pronounce it,
Cool. That's pretty neat.
and I know some of the words.
That's pretty
the
cool.
trick is you close one eye and you squint, and it looks kind of like a word.
They go from right to left, right?
Yeah, so when you read Hebrew, you go right to left, and you go down to up, because you read the vowel, and then you read if
Oh, I
it has
didn't
an
know that.
accent. Yeah,
Well, yeah, you have to look at the vowel points to know the vowels. Otherwise, but those weren't put in there originally.
no, they,
So originally there was no vowel.
But how do I know how to pronounce it?
there were no vowels, and there was just one big in Greek. There were no spaces even. It was just one big run-on sentences.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So you didn't start with Greek or anything like that, just Hebrew, huh?
The first chapter, Genesis 1:1.
Cool.
You know.
all right. So remember also Ezekiel is always referred to as Son of Man. When God talks to him, he's like, Son of Man, do this. Son of Man, say this to my people. So we'll see that play out. Ron picked up on it. Apocalypticism is going to be in here. We're going to see it. We're going to get to the wheels, and there's a lot of interpretations of that, so it'll be fun.
Alien spaceships.
But some scholars have said there's four wheels. It represents the four apostles, and we'll talk about it.
Well, that's the actual You're being curious when you say
He
that.
called himself son of
I'm
man
not.
a lot.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
So was Ezekiel the first one that was sort of given that name?
Because remember, also Daniel is called Son of Man, and Daniel's writing around the same time as Ezekiel.
He saw the Son of Man.
Yeah, so,
Dark clouds.
so Ezekiel is in Babylon, Daniel's in Babylon. The only prophet that's in Jerusalem during this time period is Jeremiah. That's why Jeremiah is sad to read, because he's weeping at watching all of this happen. He survives because he's later taken to Egypt, and then the legend says that he was killed there. So the other theme we're going to see is the new temple. And we'll see that at the very towards the end of the book. But we'll see the temple that is currently in Jerusalem before it's destroyed. We're going to see Christ in Ezekiel. Believe it or not, Ezekiel is not just law. There's a lot of gospel. There's a lot of foreshadowing of what Christ is going to do. And we're going to see a lot of sin and a lot of God's grace. So,
What's new?
yeah.
What else?
So any questions about some of the theological themes we are going to encounter as we go through? All right. So for the historical context, instead of me sitting up here trying to lecture, we're going to read it from 2 Kings. This will be the longest reading we have in this class, because we're going to read 2 chapters. We're going to read chapters 24 and 25. And then we're going to begin to answer the questions. Chapter 24 and 25. So just so you know, I'm pulling these questions from a source that I've used in the past. Instead of us buying a bunch of books, I'm going to just create a study each week or every 2 weeks, however long it takes us. Do you guys enjoy having the text on the page, or do you like reading your own translations?
I don't think it matters. I think we're reading the translation.
Like your own?
Yeah.
Okay. I just thought, because that's all, like, that saves paper when I don't have to cut the page. So,
Plus, it might be good to have this offline every week beforehand.
yeah. Have they said anything?
I haven't seen them saying.
Okay.
Some Keith said something about God of strength, and it was so long ago.
But yeah, like, if,
24 and 25.
yeah, I'll make sure to, like, have these emailed to people that want them.
It looks like he's typing again.
You guys are gonna, because I'm getting a glare on here, so.
Who's glaring at you?
I can't see the question. I'm like, I get a glare from here and I get a worse one over here.
No updates.
Okay. All right. So I'll put, so this is the book I'm kind of using for this, and there's another resource I have. It's God's Word for Today, Ezekiel, I Am the Lord. It's an older study, but it's very well done. It's from Concordia Publishing House. So I'll be reading from time to time just to give you kind of to remind you of what's going on in the text. And then I pull some of the questions from this. So, but I always want to give you my sources so I cite them. So you guys, in case you're like, oh, this is interesting, I want to get that book that Pastor was using. That way you have it right there. Or you can always come see me in my office. It sits on my shelf. So, do we have any questions about Ezekiel before we start reading the historical context? See anything coming? All right. So, just some of the names, just pronounce them the best you can. All of us are our friends here, so we're going to start at Ezekiel chapter 24, verse 1, and we're going to go all the way until we'll just read all of 25 too, even though, yeah, so, because it sets the stage for Ezekiel. So in the days, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up to Jehoiakim, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him.
And the Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldeans, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the Ammonites, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by his servants, the prophets. How far should I go?
If we each want to read a verse or a couple verses, it's up to you, Bobby.
Okay.
Which way are we going?
I just jumped in because we
We
were.
want to start with,
We're on chapter 24 of Ezekiel.
No, 24, 2 Kings, I thought.
yeah,
Where are we at?
2
Kings.
Second Kings.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's on
I thought you said it first.
yeah, I started going back too,
It's
yeah.
on your sheet right here.
Got it.
So this is about at least 3 years before Ezekiel writes his book, I think. According, mine says 597 BC.
So this is, we're about to read about the first deportation that's going to take place. So remember, there's 3 of them. We know of the first one, the second one isn't so well known, and then the third one is where we really know. It's 586. The Babylonians come in and they just lay waste to Jerusalem.
So going back to the start, if I'm reading, understanding this. So Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up, goes to Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
and
Jehoiakim.
Who was the king of
Jerusalem.
Jerusalem at the time,
Mm-hmm.
became his servant. So Nebuchadnezzar sort of took over Jerusalem for 3 years.
He kept Jehoiakim in power, but Nebuchadnezzar was kind of the big boss.
Okay,
But then Jehoiakim later decided to rebel against
Okay.
Nebuchadnezzar, and that's what brings him down.
okay.
But remember, this is a God fulfilling his word to his people. He warned them by the prophets that the day of the Lord is coming. You keep sinning against me. You keep worshiping other gods. He's slow to anger, but at a point, he's had enough, and this is him setting the stage for it. Remember, God raises up enemy nations against the Israelites, and he uses them for his purpose, and then they themselves will fall down.
So, okay, so then Jehoiakim rebels against Nebuchadnezzar,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Why would you do
all
that?
these Chaldeans and Syrians and Moabites, so they must have all been in cahoots with Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, remember Babylon is the big boy on the block now. They're the so you had the Assyrians were big, and then the Babylonians came in, and they were the flash to power. They were very powerful for a very short time, and this is when they were in power.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Surely this came upon Judah at the command of the Lord to remove them out of the sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he had done.
And also for the innocent blood that he had shed. For he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not pardon.
Rabbi,
Yep. Now the rest of the deeds of Jehoiakim, all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his place. So Jehoiakim is dead now. Is that it?
Mm-hmm. And his son's in power now.
And the king of Egypt did not come again out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken all that belonged to the king of Egypt from the brook of the Egypt to the river Euphrates.
Jehoiachin reigns in Judah. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. His mother's name was yeah, the daughter of, oh boy,
Of Jerusalem.
yeah, and Jerusalem.
What verse now?
We're on 9.
I told the confirmation kids L was like a short for God's name, Elohim. And they're like, well, we use the L for like loser.
Not
Right, 9.
And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord according to all that his father had done?
At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up to Jerusalem, and the city was besieged.
And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to the city while his servants were besieging it. I'm leaving the good names for you, Rob.
And
Jehoiachin.
Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, gave himself up to the king of Babylon. Himself and his mother and his servants and his officials and his palace officials. The king of Babylon took him prisoner in the 8th year of his reign and carried off all the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold in the temple of the Lord, which Solomon, king of Israel, had made, as the Lord had foretold.
He carried away all Jerusalem and all the officials and all the mighty men of valor, 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and the smiths. None remained except the poorest people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon. The king's mother, the king's wives, his officials, and the chief men of the land he took into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon.
And the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon all the men of valor, 7,000, and the craftsmen and the metal workers, 1,000, all of them strong and fit for war.
And the king of where are we at here? And the king of Babylon made Mattaiah, Jehoiachin's uncle, king in his palace, and changed his name to Zedekiah.
Zedekiah.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, but,
It's okay.
so, all right, so they first, so after 3 years, Jehoiakim kind of rebels, but apparently he's not, he must, repel him or something, because he's still, because his son then still is in power, right?
So Jehoiachin is dead. Jehoiakim, his son, is now in power.
Right, but, so,
But they have
it's not like
control of the
Babylon
city.
took over Judah at that time,
They came in and they occupied them, yeah.
but they didn't.
They're not getting rid of everyone all at once.
Yeah,
so
this happens in 3 ways.
That's-
So we read about the first one. That's the one we just read. We're gonna read about the second and the third one. The
That's
second one isn't as mentioned as much.
They're setting up a puppet king.
Yeah,
They're kind of like here in the U.S. with we're like Chinese ruled now.
Okay.
So-
Okay, that's about it.
We got it.
so what did, Jehoiakim and Chin, do that was unpleasing? Because he said
He gave himself up to the king of Babylon.
no,
Says he did evil in the eyes of the Lord.
yeah,
You want a specific what he did?
well,
Oh.
yeah,
I don't think we heard it. I mean, they just said it's like whenever another king went, this guy did evil in the eyes of the Lord. This one did right in the eyes of the Lord, like his father, and it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And there was just another one of those. And he did evil. Him and his father did evil.
Yeah, he probably worshipped other gods.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
whatever he did to Nebuchadnezzar, it really ticked him off. But
He
okay.
was sensitive.
So then after so many years, 3 years, so then now, like you say, really ticked him off. Now he came in probably with his own troops and stuff,
yeah, he besieges, he surrounds the city.
yeah. And then takes everybody captive,
Take it all.
Not everybody, just certain people.
but,
Yeah, and then they set up that the next ruler, which is Zedekiah.
yeah,
Zedekiah, sorry.
yeah, the uncle, but he's a puppet too. Okay.
Yeah,
Thought he was.
But they took all the stuff from the temple that Solomon got.
Yeah.
some of it, not all of it. Yeah.
Okay, cut it up and, yeah,
Mhm.
probably melted it down. So.
Perfectly clear.
Next verse. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Hamudal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah.
He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done.
So the uncle is the same age as his nephew.
Mhm.
For because of the anger of the Lord, it came to the point in Jerusalem and Judah that he cast them out from his presence.
And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon.
So he irritated God, and he irritated the king of Babylon. I'm like, that's a lose-lose one there.
Yeah. And in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th day of the month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came with all his army against Jerusalem and laid siege to it. And they built siege works all around it.
So the city was besieged till the 11th year of the king Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was so severe in the city that there was no food for the people of the land.
Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, by the king's garden through the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans were around the city, and they went in the direction of Arabia.
But the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him.
They captured the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon at Riblah, and they passed sentence on him.
They slaughtered the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in chains, and took him to Babylon.
Excuse me, in the 5th month, the 7th day of the month. That was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Nebuzaradan, the captain of the bodyguard, servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. Oh, okay.
And he burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. Every great house he burned down.
And all the army of the Chaldeans who were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem.
And the rest of the people who were left in the city, and the deserters who had deserted to the city of Babylon, together with the rest of the multitude, Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the guard, carried into exile.
But the captain of the guard left some of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and plowmen.
Pillars of bronze that were in the house of the Lord, and the stands and the bronze sea that were in the house of the Lord, the Chaldeans broke in pieces and carried the bronze to Babylon.
And they took away the pots and the shovels and the snuffers and the dishes for incense and all the vessels of bronze used in the temple service.
So who were the Chaldeans? I mean, they seem to be his army. Are they just neighbors or something?
They were from a country. I'm trying to remember what country they came from.
But they're not the Babylonians, they're
No.
the Chaldeans.
No,
But they're, okay.
they were kind of with the Babylonians.
Well, they carried this all to Babylon.
What was that, Ron?
They carried, it says they carried it, the bronze to
We're
Babylon.
wondering why the Chaldeans took stuff to Babylon.
Yeah.
Well, because they're
Yeah.
part of it.
They're an alliance or
Yeah.
Yeah, they-
part of the Babylonian Empire or whatever.
I have a question, this bronze sea and these stands and this bronze sea, early in
Sounds pretty cool.
yeah, that's, I remember when they were making that with the cherubim, and, is that?
This is part of the temple that they're taking
Yeah.
and destroying.
We should make one out of Legos.
Okay, the fire pans also and bowls. What was a bowl the captain of the guard took away as gold? And what was of silver as silver? And for the 2 pillars, the 1 sea and the stands that Solomon had made for the house of the Lord. Bronze of all these vessels were beyond weight.
Yeah. The height of the one pillar was 18 cubits, and on it was a capital of bronze. The height of the capital was 3 cubits. A lattice work of pomegranates, all of bronze, were all around the capital. And the second pillar had the same with the lattice work.
And the captain of the guard took Shara, the chief priest of Zephron, and the second priest, and the 3 keepers of the threshold.
And from the city he took an officer who had been in command of the men of war, and 5 men of the king's council who were found in the city, and the secretary of the commander of the army who mustered the people of the land, and 60 men of the people of the land who were found in the city.
And Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon at Riblah. And the king of Babylon struck them down and put them to death at Riblah, in the land of Hamath. So Judah was taken in exile out of its land.
Gedaliah made governor of Judah, and over the people who remained in the land of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Babylon, had left, he appointed Gedaliah, the son of Achim, son of Shaphan, governor.
Now, when all the captains and their men heard that the king of Babylon had appointed Gedaliah governor, they came with their men to Gedaliah at Mizpah, namely Ishmael, the son of Kaman, and Johanan, the son of Korah, and Serah, the son of Mr. T, and Mr. N, and J, the son of the Maccatite. Please.
Oh, he,
Yeah, you're up, man.
and,
Gedaliah.
Gedaliah swore to them and their men, saying, do not be afraid because of the Chaldean officials. Live in the land and serve the king of Babylon, and it shall be well with you. But in the 7th month, Ishmael, the son of Nethaniah, son of Ishama, of the royal family, came with 10 men and struck down Gedaliah and put him to death along with the Jews and the Chaldeans who were with him at Mizpah.
Then all the people, both small and great, and the captains of the forces arose and went to Egypt, for they were afraid of the Chaldeans.
Is it Chaldeans or Chaldeans?
Chaldeans.
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 And in the 37th year of exile, Jehoiakim, king of Judah, in the 12th month, on the 27th day of the month, Evil Merodach, king of Babylon, in the year that he began to reign, graciously freed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, from prison.
And he spoke kindly to him and gave him a seat above the seats of the kings who were with him in Babylon.
To
So,
that one over good.
yeah,
So Jehoiakim put off his prison garments, and every day of his life he dined regularly at the king's table.
And for his allowance, a regular allowance was given him by the king according to his daily needs, as long as he lived.
All right.
That's strange.
Any chance for anybody?
Yeah,
that's just
Good.
you just gotta follow and look at the timeline that I gave you, and it kind of helps connect where we are.
So,
So then-
John Kelly has a comment in the, what does it say there?
Chaldeans
Chaldean,
are synonymous with Babylonians. They inhabited Babylonia. Seems the the terms can be used interchangeably.
Oh, okay. Thanks, John. So one of these guys, they escaped to Egypt, like you said, for a while.
Mhm.
And then after 37 years, they decided to let this guy out of prison.
Yeah, Jehoiachin was taken in the first the deportation.
And what about Ezekiel?
He's taken in the first deportation.
This one.
Yeah, the very first one that we read.
We haven't seen him yet in this.
Okay,
No, he's not listed in Second Kings.
but that's why we're reading it.
Mhm.
So I wonder why he gave him this high position after letting him out of jail.
He did something. He did a favor for him, that's my guess.
He did what, Ron?
He did a favor.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know that he really had power, but
But
maybe
remember, this is after Nebuchadnezzar has been either put in, he's gone crazy or he's died, one of the two.
well, it's only his first year of reign, I think it said.
Oh,
So we covered a lot of history in chapters 24 and 25, but it sets the stage for Ezekiel. So
When these
evil,
pastors-
evil though.
Back then, when the kings were succeeded, was it mostly by blood family members? That was mostly in it, but traditionally it was always blood family,
yes,
son or nephew or,
right.
it was pretty much blood all the way through.
But that's why it might be a strategically a good time to take over if you have a king that's only 18 years old or 21 a few years later. They don't have a lot of experience and their advisors may not be.
Why he was only in power for 3 months.
Yeah.
It's easy to overcome.
And then you have Zedekiah, who didn't work out too well. So, all right. So, yeah, we'll answer a couple of these, at least the first couple of questions. So, in 2 Kings, there are described 2 examples of the Babylonian practice of deporting some captives and leaving some behind. According to 2 Kings 24, verses 10 to 16, who among the people of Judah did the Babylonians take into exile?
Blacksmiths.
Yeah.
You pick the people who are valuable to you that you could use for many things, just like, even in recent times, that's who they wanted to find out, can you do this? Well, you're gonna help our cause, because you're able to fix this, make this, understand this, I guess. So it's no different years ago than today's wars. Hitler in Germany with the Jews, how they went through and figured out who could do what and what job. They didn't realize at the time what they unfortunately were getting into.
Yeah, so they take anyone who, what did you say, Rob? Skilled workers,
Mhm.
and then all of your political people, and then your,
Strong and fit for war.
yeah, and then your, what are they? I'm blanking on the term for the guys who serve in like the temple, the spiritual side. I'm blanking on the term I want to use.
Religious.
Yeah, but remember the priests
Levites?
are educated. Like they want to take anyone who is educated. So your priests at this time were very well educated because they had to know the law and things like that.
Because I know, if they had a lot of people, it would have less of a rebellion when you would have less educated, skilled people there. So they said, well, let's get those out and leave.
That's
If we
exactly
leave thousands and hundreds of thousands of people, less educated, less wealthy, that we're not gonna have to worry about a rebellion later, so that
Manual
you move
laborers.
them out.
Yeah,
But yeah, if we break up all the wise people and all the political power, there's less of a chance they'll rise up against us.
Right.
So who
That's
was
how-
left behind?
Farmers.
Okay.
Poor
Yeah.
uneducated people, and
vine dressers.
we're not gonna cause a rebellion.
Yeah. So I've already answered this. Was Ezekiel part of the first or the second deportation to Babylon?
First.
Yeah. So Ezekiel goes in the first one. Daniel goes in the first one. Jehoiakim is in the first one. So if you guys ever want to do Daniel after we do Ezekiel, it'd be great because we wouldn't have to lay the groundwork because we're already doing that. But that's just it.
So what was Ezekiel then?
They got 2
Be a
votes.
skilled worker, a politician, an educated person, or a military type?
He was from a royal family. He was going to be a priest.
So that would be like educated.
He was wise. He was going to be a priest in the temple, but he was too young to begin his ministry when he was first taken.
Okay.
So what happened to the temple in Jerusalem during the 2 Babylonian attacks?
Ransacked and dismantled.
Well, the first one they just kind of sack it and they kind of destroy it. Not destroy it. They just kind of take the stuff from it. The second time that they come in and they siege the city, they just totally demolish it. They burn it to the ground. And it amazes me the detail that we get of the beauty of the temple. Because if you guys will, if we ever do it, we ever go post-exilic when they build the second temple, the people cry because it's not as majestic and as wonderful as the first one. It's puny in size compared to the one that is destroyed. And that's built by Zerubbabel, Zerubbabel, I think is how I pronounce it. All right. So, would Ezekiel have witnessed the temple's destruction firsthand?
No.
No, because he was in Babylon by that time. All right. So we are going to actually pause at question 2 because we're going to have to do a little bit more reading. So the next questions we're going to look at, they are tied into the theological themes that we're going to discover. So we're going to kind of read around the Old Testament to kind of set the stage at some of the themes. But I promise that is the longest reading we have. I just wanted to do that at once. But next week I have like a little summary that I'll read so we can all refresh ourselves of where we are. But we are just beginning to set the stage for what Ezekiel beginning his ministry. So, yep. All right. Any questions for you guys?
We're gonna have to start more simultaneous Bible studies so we can get through all these.
Daniel.
Hey, I'm all good.
9 o'clock, 10 o'clock.
Gotta learn how to say the names.
Yeah. That's tough.
Like I am game for whatever you get. Like I am like yeah. I went to seminary because I love the Bible, but there's 4 areas of seminary you can study. There's historical, which is like Luther and the historical Christian church. There's systematic, which is doctrine, the small catechism, Book of Concord. Then you have practical, which is like your preaching and your counseling and like that, and your worship. And then you have exegetical, which is Bible. When I got to seminary, I was all excited about the practical, the preaching, the counseling, all that fun stuff. 4th year, I went back, my 4th year, which would have been last year, I took a bunch of exegetical courses. Even though the languages have been a struggle for me, I love the exegetical courses. So I loaded up on exeget. So I took post-exilic, I took Revelation, I took biblical archaeology. So I love to study the Bible in its context. We're not just gonna tear it out of its thing. So, but
We have to read the whole book.
yeah. No, but if we're gonna do like a study, like if we do a Daniel after Ezekiel, we won't have to read as much of the context because we've already done that. I might refresh us on it, but we won't go and read Kings again. We'll be like, oh, okay. So, but
We'll know all the names involved.
yeah.
Especially those ones that are like one letter off.
So why did, okay, so Babylon at this point in time had taken over most of the land then? So, but they hadn't obviously taken over Israel or Judah at this particular time. I mean, they came, but before that, were they kind of then like the last country Babylon that they wanted to take over? Or are they just kind of expanding there?
They're just expanding.
I think
Judah was
all
along the
kings
way.
want to be. I think all kings want to be expansionists.
Yeah.
None of them were satisfied with their own.
There was 2 kingdoms at the time, Israel and Judah.
Yeah.
One of them had already fallen.
Oh.
Judah had already. The northern kingdom had already been taken. But then remember, after the Babylonians have their shot at fame and they do their expansion, they're quickly demolished by the Persians come in with Cyrus and Darius and all that. So, but remember that God uses these nations for His purpose, and then they crumble.
You gotta go to work.
So,
I have another question.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar, are there other Nebuchadnezzars in the Bible?
he has a son. I'm trying to remember if it's Nebuchadnezzar the second, but he has a son.
I don't know, but he has a captain guard that has a name just like his.
Mhm. But yeah, next week we will.
Easy names like Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah, about
A
it.
lot easier to read.
But next week we will look at the next set of questions. And that will probably take our time, because we're gonna look at what it was, the right of being a priest. We're gonna look at how he reveals himself to the people throughout the Old Testament. We're really just gonna dig into those theological things that we have, and then we will get to the first chapter of Ezekiel. I know you guys are either gonna love the way I'm approaching this, or you're gonna be like, all right, we've got the history, let's get to the prophet. But this is how we approach it in seminary. We do a lot of historical study before we even dive into the prophet.
Yes.
So,
Some background.
my plan is to approach this like we do in seminary, just take out the Hebrew, because that would be painful for all of us.
And you gotta start on that.
Yeah.
We don't want to say those names in Hebrew either.
So
Probably easier to read in Hebrew than the Arabic.
Yeah, take out the vowel.
we'll just see how far we get before we break for the summer, and then we'll just pick it back up in the fall and just keep going. So, but if it takes us 2 years, 2.5 years, I mean,
Yeah, let's unpack it. Man.
yeah,
Learn it.
God didn't give us His word just to blow through and be like, oh yeah, what did He say? I don't know. We read it. That's what counts. So
We got to the day before Armageddon to get it done.
yeah.
Well, actually, it would be good to have it read before that so that we can explain it to other people.
Yeah.
And really kind of understand and
We
liberalize.
don't know when Armageddon's coming, so we just have to keep on trucking.
Yeah.
You guys are free when we get to the point in the book where it talks about the apocalypse. He had different views on it to bring those in. We can discuss them, but
Yeah.
So it's gonna
Yeah.
be
Lutheran apocalyptic stuff is boring compared to some other ones.
I mean, if you really want to do an interesting study, we could always do the Apocrypha, but I would have to go to the deacons before I do that, because that is not, that's not in the Bible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Luther says
that's wild too.
it's interesting to
Yeah.
read, but we would do it through the Lutheran, so they have the Lutheran Study Bible, they have a Lutheran version of the Apocrypha that has
Really?
the same kind of study notes.
Oh,
It's
really?
good.
That would be kind of cool, but that's like way out there.
I'd like to maybe look at that on my own.
You
The
probably have
angles.
to buy the book. I think
Yeah.
they're like $25. CPH has it. I have a copy. I bought it when I was in seminary. I was like, oh, I got the Apocrypha. Oh, and I'm like, oh wait. Luther said this is good to read, but not as high as the Bible. So, but-
I saw a couple of things in there and I was like really intrigued and I wanted to get into it. But I'm like, well, got a little afraid of it. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know if I'm supposed to, do this.
It fills in the gap between when Micah quits talking and when Matthew begins begins writing. It reads a lot of how Rome came into power, how group after group just came in and conquered the Israelites, and we get the story of the Passover, or the Hanukkah is in there. So
Doesn't it go into like a lot with the Nephilim and all that too? Like what we're talking about here? I think.
I don't think so. No, a lot of it is post-exilic between
Okay.
after Micah is done and then before Matthew begins. So, but I plan to be here for a long time, so we can take on whatever kind of stuff. I'll just go to the deacons if we're gonna go that direction. Like, all right, this is what we want to do. What do you guys think?
But we don't have that much time.
All right. So let us pray. Gracious and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to study your word, Lord. Lord, it's challenging as we read all these names and these events and all these different things that take place. But Lord, we ask that you would be with us as we continue our study next week, as we continue to set the scene for your prophet Ezekiel and what he witnessed as he was living and as he was writing to your people. Lord, in the midst of all these things that we're trying to make sense of, just help us to be reassured that of your presence with us, that your presence with your people in the Old Testament, that in the midst of all the things that we will uncover in Ezekiel, and we can think of all the things that we go through in this life, that you love us, that you died for us, and that you are coming again for us. And so, Lord, I just ask that you would continue to bless us. Be with us during this season of Lent, and be with all of the ministries here at St. Matthew. We ask this all in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
You gotta go to work?
Yeah, I got it.
I got a nice, nice case for my,
Don't work too hard.
my nice carry case.
All right.
Yeah, it's good.
That's Brian, can you go back to your office?
Yeah. I have to drop something off.
Would you mind dropping this off on?
No, my wife got it for me for Christmas.
All right. Good woman. All right.
I'll see you.
Oh, all right.
Okay. I'll try not to.
I'll see you. Like I said, it's either Pastor Blonsky or Pastor Kinney, one of them, but would like to get those if you go to some other service, just to see what other churches.
Who was all online? Keith, John Kelly, is there someone else?
No, I think it's just Keith and John Kelly, but that's all we saw.
Yeah, it's,
Yes.
Did everyone sign in?
Have to do penance.
Hey, who next? Saw the
Ron.
chat, so it looks like it's working. Oh,
I think we might just want to simplify it. I think we switched everything.
No way.
I thought we called it the ball in his keep.
No, yesterday, he had one all day. It might have been my diet. I'm not sure if I ate something that